the quick mask. Does everybody, if anybody would like me to demonstrate that quick mask again, just let me know. That's when you paint with the quick mask to get the isolation. But when you are making a composite, making your compositing all your images with all your layers. On this one, let me make sure where I am. So I'm black, right? I'm locked, so I'm going to double click. And again, the practice is to duplicate, assuming that I might want to get all of these individuals separately. So then I would just keep duplicating them because they're already in, and just work with one at a time. So one of the fastest tools, I'm only going to go really fast because I'll show you how to use that Bezier curve. And this Bezier curve is used in creating logo designs. And again, don't forget that space bar. And if you make a mistake, just hit delete key and it deletes the last point. And so what's great about this tool, the path tool, is you can make silhouettes. So if you're making a logo that happened to be a maple leaf, then you can actually do what I'm doing, going around the outside of the subject matter and making it become these marching ants, but they're not perfect. So when I convert it to be a vector tool, this becomes a path. So you could trace leaves, you could trace all kinds of iconographic symbols. And symbols are very useful today in the 21st century. Just to jump, I'm going to save this path so I don't lose it. Remember, it takes a long time to create these marching ants. So you want to be sure to be able to save them. So let me go back to this. There, I have it back. And I'm going to come up here to select. Remember, select is where you reverse the marching ants to the outside or the inside. And then I'm going to save this selection. So I'm just going to call this figure 1. And now I don't have to worry about it. I can do a Control D. Remember, the Control D or Command D gets rid of those marching ants so that you can continue to work. So I wanted to show you, this is a really valuable, it's called the NEUR Project. And what it is, it's basically a design store. It's actually a social media site where designers put their portfolios. So if I was designing something with a maple leaf, here are all the designs that a graphic designer did in designing a maple leaf. So if I was designing an app or I was designing a game, I would be able to I could go to this, and it's all different graphic designers' designs. And then you would pay for their designs. And sometimes I give them to you for free. And sometimes, you would charge the client, obviously, if it was for that. But the point to be made is what they did is they took a photograph of a leaf and then they traced it. And they can use the marching ants, the vector tool, like I'm going to show you right now. So these are all different icons that people have used for package design or logo design or apps, as I said, and it's very popular. So it's actually a design site. So to get back to my marching ants, I can now load it because it went away. So I'm going to load my marching ants again. And now I have my marching ants. So this is how we use a path tool. So we kind of started, but I want to show it to you specifically with this. So now I'm going to come up here, make a working path first. And what it does, as you can see, is that it creates these vectors here. Let me get rid of the grid. So I see the grid, I want to get rid of the grid, show, pixel grid, take that away. And what you can see are, and then you need to, in order to edit these points, you need the path tool, these selection tools. So the white, so in a vector program such as Illustrator and also in Photoshop with the path tool, the black arrow selects the whole object. So I could move the whole object, but the white arrow selects just the points. So to get to the points, you kind of select off of it and it's white. And then you see these, what we call these Bezier curves. So you see, I'm pulling it out on the edge. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the points to be a little off from the subject matter, because I'll show you what I'm going to do next, which is stroke the brush with the path. And so I'm spacebar, don't forget, lets you move the picture up. And you see I can do these curves. You can bring them in, you can bring them out. And here, this is another tool that's in Illustrator, and this is where I say you can design logos and do also that microphone. I showed you that microphone before, that graphic microphone, the one that looked like this. This is the tool you would use for that on this one. Where was that microphone? That lovely microphone. So on right here. So on that microphone, this one right here, the tool that I'm showing you would help you to do that. So right now what I'm doing is I'm just getting this, back to the white arrow, I'm just getting this to be where I want it to be. And you see I can bring it up. And if I needed another point, you can add another point. So I need something to kind of get into this corner here, like that. And then space bar, that's okay. And I'll bring this out a little bit further. Bring this out here. And so you can bring these in tighter. So you can see where this becomes, where you can really get control of where you want the marching ants to be. And again, if you have something that you want as a curve, you can add a point like I do. And I'm just about done here. Bring this in a little bit more. So you can see you can add more depending on the distance that you want and the curve. Now, if you wanted something straight, like this, if you use this tool, which is the convert point, it will make it, well, not actually, in Illustrator it makes it straight. It won't make it straight here. I can come over here. Let me bring this out so you can see what I'm doing. So you see how it's curved? If I use the convert tool, not this one, right down here, it makes it straight. So if you don't want a curve, you use a convert tool and it makes it straight. So I could come around here and I can make all of these just become straight. So now they become like the polygonal. But if I want a curve, you mouse down and turn it into a curve. Again, you can mouse down and turn it into a curve. Or you can make it straight. So on the microphone, I would need a lot of the straight lines. The only times I would need it on the curve would be here, right? And this is obviously just a circle. So that is how these vector tools, as we call them, this is in Illustrator, this is in Photoshop. And the reason why it's in Photoshop is because many people trace photographs. If you need a cow for a logo, you trace a photograph of a cow using this vector tool. And what you can do is you can actually import these paths. So I'm going to say, okay, I'm good with this now. Let me just fix this one here. And I'm going to mouse down. I'm making sure that I'm far away from the subject matter, because I'm going to show you how this will clean up my distance here. And all the way around, I'll move this out a little bit more so it's not so much, and there's that curved head. And I bring it up, and I bring this up. So you see how it really can give you the curved edges that sometimes your hand cannot do with the mouse. So now I have this, and it is saved. So I'm going to come up here and save the path. Now it's locked in. And what I want to show you with these paths is, if you notice up here under File, under Export, there's your export for web that we did the other on Thursday. And here are paths to Illustrator. So if you trace that maple leaf, or you trace that cow, or you trace that symbol, you can bring that path into Illustrator and make it become a logo, or whatever use you would like it to be. So you can see paths are very important, and you can see how connected Illustrator is. So this path tool is Photoshop's only vector tool, pretty much. So now that I have this with the path, I want to pull this off so you can see it better. So the path tools have a lot of options down here. One of them, if you roll over, let me get back to my layer here. When you roll over here, you can turn it into marching ants. So now you see I've corrected that path, and now it's marching ants. But I can turn it back. If I wanted to fix a point or not, I can turn it back. Or I could turn it into my marching ants. And so I'm going to hold it here. And the reason why we like to use the marching ants is because you can take your brush and turn your brush. Now here are the modes. We talked about the modes blending. And that would be a lot of things that I'll be talking about when we critique your final touches on your hyper in the next session. We'll look at that as well for anyone who's had their progress up or anyone has questions. You see these modes are here, and the modes are also on your layers. Let me get our layers here, right here. So modes are pretty much everywhere, but so I'm going to turn my brush into an eraser by hitting clear. And the reason why I'm doing that is because often I want to be able to use, I'm getting my brackets to be small or big. I want my brush will travel along this line. And the reason why that's advantageous when you're making a composite is because your hand is not a perfect, it shakes. So you have a lot of irregularities in your cleaning up. You kind of go into the subject matter, or you don't get close enough. So the hand is imperfect is the point. But when you have the path, when stroked with this tool right here, called Stroke Path with Brush, it will erase very smoothly all the way around and not have any of those imperfections. And that's why we like the path. So let me show you how that works. So you select the path, you select the path layer. You make sure you have the brush on, the brush is clear, and you can also, remember, anytime you see a variable, you can choose what you want. The flow in Photoshop is the starting point. Like, do you want it to start right away, or do you want it to be gradual? So these become advanced tools once you know exactly what you want. And so the opacity, I could go a little bit, but I'm going to do 100 so you can really see what it does. So 100 clear, And what you're trying to do is to get the path to be, the brush, I'm sorry, you want the brush to be small enough so that when it does the cleanup, it's going to run the rails of this path. So let's watch what happens. So I've got the brush loaded, the brush is clear, I have my path highlighted, and now I come down here and I click. And now you see, much smoother than if I did it with my hand. So this is why we like the path tool. We go in there with the polygonal and we just plot the big angles, and then we get in there and then we do the curves that we want, and then we take the path and we stroke it. So now you see here, now the way to turn off your path is deselect off of the path. So now the path, you can see it's turned on, deselect, it's turned off. So now when you zoom out, whoops, don't want to do that. Control Z. And you see how it made a nice cleanup. Because at first you're a little sloppy because you have to get the approval of everything. So you don't want to spend a lot of time on something that someone's going to say, no, I don't want that. So you do a rough extraction. If they like it, then you come back and clean the edges. So now what I can do at this point is I could take the brush, just the eraser, not the brush, and get it to be big. I should make sure I have my brush up here. Let me turn this back to normal. There. And now you see here, I'm not getting my brush silhouette on here. Why, I have no idea, but I can figure out how to fix to get that. And that would be under, now on a Mac, it's under File Preferences. On a PC, it's under Edit Preferences. And right here, I'm looking at so these preferences are really important to know about so that, you can change very basic settings. So here's cursors. And now the normal brush tip should be working for me. Sometimes if you have the caps lock on, it won't work. So I'm going to keep that on there. Standard, there is a brush, painting, needs to say okay. And so now it's giving me the standard brush for the eraser, as you can see. Let me go back. Preferences, cursors. I'm going to go back to a normal brush tip, which is this. And I'm going to do Control D. And now I can come up here. Oh, look at this. My brush for my brush for my eraser is 2000, so it's very big. So if I zoomed out, there, that's how big it was. So I couldn't see it because it was so big. So you notice how I had to check myself to see where I am. That happens to people who know this program just as much for 25 years as someone who's just known it for 3 months. So you have to be careful to look at things that now my eraser is there and I can bring it down. So what I did is I glanced up here to look at the size and it was way too big. So 90 is like that. So now you see, whoop, I don't want the soft edge, I want the hard edge. So I'm going to harden it. And now I can go in there a little bit bigger and get this all cleaned up and not worry about taking out too much. So that's the value of having the path. Number one, it saves it for you, as you see here with the marching ants, as well as making the points to be able to edit the points. And again, it's a vector tool, so that's why it's an important tool to know for the timeline. Any questions on Photoshop since we're here? Before I go on to another tool. You guys are all so quiet. Any troubleshooting that you might have in any of your hyperrealism? Okay, I'm going to keep going forward. This time I'm going to talk a little bit more about not all the tools, but the ones that will be important for you to really get to know. So for instance, there are a lot of things, let me go back to this one again, to the path. So you notice I need to get rid of the outside. So watch, and I was beginning to erase. Well, the better thing to do would be this. Go back to that path tool, turn on the marching ants, go back to select, inverse, go back to layers, be sure I'm on the right layer. Now my layers are on the outside and I can hit delete. So I didn't have to spend the time in trying to erase all around it. I just did the inverse and hit delete. So that's the value of select, inverse, inside, outside of the marching ants. So things that are like, where I want to take you next is under image adjustment. Here, there's a lot of wonderful tools that begin to help you with the colorization. So I'm going to go back to the one project file that I have here for colorization. So on here, I could get this city to be more saturated with the orange. So let me take a look at being able to do that. And that would be up here. And again, remember, wherever you have anything isolated, it will affect it. So I'm just going to quickly do the quick mask because that's one of the fast things. I'm just going to isolate something here quickly. So you can have it even separated. It doesn't have to be even the same subject matter. You can jump around. And when I deselect, it is isolated this. So you see I've got things isolated now. And now what I want to do is I want to come up here to, I'm on the one layer. I don't believe I've duplicated it, so I'm going to duplicate it. Just in case I don't like what I'm doing. Come up here to image, adjust, hue and saturation. Hue and saturation is I could make things become black and white. And as you notice, everything is black and white except what I have painted. So that would mean, if that is the case, I just did a Control Z to undo, that would mean that my marching ants are on the inside, on the outside, I'm sorry. So that's why when I came up here and I couldn't see the marching ants on the outside. So I'm just showing you, you see the marching ants are on the outside. So everything from the subject matter out is being affected. If I wanted to reverse that, again, inverse, now I could go back up to image, adjust, hue and saturation, which is what we're talking about today, and I could saturate those colors. You see? And now, say I like that, and now I'm going back to inverse, because I kind of like that black and white, and coming back to image, adjust, hue saturation, and take it down. And so now I kind of like that. Let me go back to view, fit in window, zoom in a little bit for you guys to see. And at this point, I don't have my, if I do a Control D, I'm going to lose my marching ants. So if I want to keep these marching ants, I'm going to select and save those marching ants. And I'll just call them missing buildings. So now I can do Control D and not worry about it, but know that I can go back to it. So in this composite, I didn't imagine doing this. This is what we call a happy accident. So this is the kind of stuff that I like it. I'm okay with it. It's totally hyper-realist in style and so forth. And, but the point to be made is to be able to isolate something, and that's what the marching ants are all about, so that you can apply certain filter effects. When we start doing the poster, we'll cover a lot more tools, such as here, the filter gallery, where you have all kinds of different filters to do different things, visually, in any capacity that you want it to be. But we're not doing that because we're doing hyperrealism. But we'll get into that when we get into the next phase with the next assignment on there. So the other thing that is important is with this adjustment tab right here, you will find a lot of things that are very, that you will tend to like a lot. So things such as replacing color. So if you don't like a particular color or something, you can get in there and actually change the color. HD toning actually gives you hyper details. It's a bit of a trend right now. And I'll show you an example of what Rolling Stone magazine did with Mick Jagger's face. Is they put hyper toning in, and it showed all of his wrinkles, really incredibly intense. And I don't think you can find it, actually. They had to take it down. It was just on a magazine, but they don't have it on the web. So I've been trying to search for it for years now. But that's what HD toning does. It increases, it intensifies detail. But the most important one, black and white, you can take one layer and convert it completely to black and white. And all the other ones can stay color. So that's what the black and white does. Saturation, as I showed you, also did that. And so that's where, you know, for instance, if we, let's go back, like if I go back, I'm gonna undo. See, you can go back to undo. Let me see where I am. I can't see the outer edge, so I don't know if I have what inverse. We're on the outside. Okay, good. So now this will affect the color. I didn't have color before because what I wanted to show you was under adjustment, under hue, saturation. Here you can actually change the dominant color of things. So like I'll push the saturation, and you see I can turn it to green. If I want, I can bring it back a little bit so it's not too green. And I can also push the darkness or push the lightness to flatten it. And again, don't forget things like this. Under image, adjust contrast. You can push contrast or not. See, it flattens it. So that really, and so brightness is going to wash it out. I'm not a big fan of this tool, but I wanted to show it to you. I'm a very big fan, and I use this all the time, the levels. The reason why I like the levels is the contrast is only black and white. This gives you the ability to push the grays and push the whites and push the whites and push the grays. So I tend to be more here, getting what I want, because it has greater controls with the grays. So Photoshop people who use Photoshop, they don't use all the tools. They sort of use your favorite tools over and over again, and only when they have a creative objective do they branch out and know that they need to learn some more tools because they can't get the results that they want. And that's really the key to all of any tool that you learn. You never learn all of it, all the tools. So that's an important window right there, is the adjustment one. And the channel mixer is very good. Photo filter is also very good. You can choose color, and you see how you can make it sepia tone. So that, you know, that wasn't something that was giving you blue, green, and rainbow colors. You could go there and actually choose a very specific color that you want. And depending on the density, you can push that. And if you notice on that poster example I gave you, there's a lot of that kind of highlighting where you colorize and make things really dark. Like over here, this is using the filters. Here, this is using the glows that I will show you on how to use glows and typefaces. So one of the things I'm going to unshare for a moment, because example, let me show you, okay?
You said to erase it?
Yeah, I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. So as I said, showing is always easier than getting this done. Okay, so like here's your slice, right?
Uh-huh.
Let me get rid of the background so we can see this a little better. Whoops. The magic eraser, 32%. There we go. Okay. And you have a dark background. So let me make a layer. Bring the layer behind it. I'm going to fill it with a color. This is fine. Use my paint bucket. I'm on that layer. There we go. So what I was speaking about is there's a couple of things you can do. Is you could put this on top of it, right? And I'm going to just duplicate this to show you. Because you have a sky. So I've got, you know, you've got the stars in the front, stars in the back. And if I take this layer and I take my eraser and I have it to be opacity and a soft edge, and then I'm over here, you see, I can begin to go like this. And I could bring this all the way up now. And then, so what you have, you see how I'm faded out. You're fading out on the edges there, you see?
Yeah.
And so you're kind of, so in other words, when one is in space, you're three-dimensional, right? So the pizza around here is more 100%, where some of it is backed up. Same thing with him. You could really make him be more,
like make him like
more
pop
opacity,
up.
like I'm doing on the Statue of Liberty.
Got
Let me
you.
get this back to 100.
So I want to make those two like pop out more.
Right, exactly. We're up here. Let me take this down again. And that's with the eraser, and that's with the opacity. Bring that down so that this way I'm not 1%. That's too much work. I can make it lighter.
And he's not like faded.
And it's right. And it's a little bit, it's not, it has, I see a little bit, but not so much. You see? And that will make it feel like it's in space. Because space is three-dimensional, even though it looks very flat to us, you know, from Earth.
I let the like the sports balls, I left those fading because I wanted it to like represent like the things that I like are like fading away right now.
Yeah, I think that's very good. I just think that in certain highlights, I would bring in like this would be very nice to see fully 100%. Because remember, these things are three-dimensional.
Is it okay for you to make it full while it's fading? Like you get what I'm saying? Like.
Well, that's why I did this for you.
Okay.
So you see where you want it to be fully 100%, you erase.
Okay.
You see? You see this layer up here?
Yep. Layer 2.
Yep. I erased but you see where it's faded here on that.
Mm.
So the sky is behind, but then I put the sky in the front. So if you look back, watch what I did. I'm going back multiple times. You can go back quite a bit. And then again, remember your history up here. Like it didn't go back all the way. So I'm going to pick up my history right here and then erase that.
Okay.
Let me see. We should erase it. Hold on. There we go. Let me see if this one. Yeah. So it really erased it, even erased the layers that I had done. So that's why you want to be able to take that eraser brush and just you have to put a layer on top of it, don't forget. There's a layer on top of it. And I'm erasing slowly. Okay. And leaving everything else and then you can actually lower the layer on this. You see?
And it won't affect anything else. It won't like make anything else come up.
No, you see how that's very highlighted, but this is the way yours is right now. Yours is very subdued here. Very subdued, but highlight the important aspects of each object. So each object, like this is very interesting on the football. This is very interesting on the basketball. A pepperoni is really interesting on a pizza.
Got you.
You see? And so this way, and then the same thing with his face. He could be very 100% present. The way your pencil is. Your pencil is the only thing that's 100% opaque.
Yes.